Welcome back to another exciting and thrill-filled adventure with DIY Nautical Dream. Okay, maybe that was a little over the top. Anyways, we'll go ahead and get our next video started. Hi, I'm Rich.
I'm Priscilla.
And together we're DIY Nautical Dream.
This week's episode takes us to Cleveland, Ohio to look at 1980 Formosa 51. Welcome back to another episode of DIY Nautical Dream. I'm Priscilla.
And I'm Rich.
Together,
we make DIY Nautical Dream.
So this episode will review the Formosa 51 in Cleveland, Ohio.
Right.
1980.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. So we, after we left Trinidad, we flew from Trinidad to Cleveland, Ohio. This was another one of the boats that we had scheduled on our list of boats we were going to visit on our way back home from Trinidad. And so we went to Cleveland, Ohio, and we went to go look at this Formosa 51. And so we got a rental car after we landed and drove to this, I'm not sure what it's called. It's a boat storage location, and it's on Lake Erie. It's right next to Lake Erie. And the boat's actually stored indoors. They store these boats inside in the wintertime to keep them out of the weather, which is pretty cool. We meet the broker. We walk in and whoa, there it is. There's a whole bunch of boats all stored inside. And here's this huge Formosa 51 on a big steel stand cradle type thing. Right away, we're kind of impressed how big this thing is inside this building. Since we already can see the hull, we went ahead and kind of looked at the hull, the bottom side of the boat already, since it's already there to inspect. And the hull is in really good shape. This one has the two windows in the aft transom, which we were expecting. So one of the nice things about having the boat already out of the water is we can go ahead and start doing the hull inspection now. And so that's what we did, is we walked up to this and took a good close look at it. The rudder looks like it's in really good shape. The bottom pane on this is in really good condition. And you can tell this boat's been hauled out and sitting out of the water for a long time, because there was no evidence of any kind of marine growth or anything like that on it. The hull didn't look like it had any blisters in it. It was in really good condition for the age of the boat. So we took a look at the underside of the bowsprit as well, which we call the dolphin viewing platform, and it all looked good. The wood on there looked really nice, and you could tell the previous owner had done some modifications to it, but everything looked good. The bow section also looked good, where the dolphin striker plate area mounts to the hull. That all looks really good. So yeah, the hull of this boat's in really exceptionally good condition for its age. And as you can see here, this is another one of those Formosas that has only the two windows in the aft transom. And you went and stood by the rudder, and the rudder is even big on this boat, so it makes us look pretty small standing underneath it. But so that was pretty cool. And on this particular Formosa, it had only two windows in the aft transom, which was kind of odd because we were expecting to see three. You know, no big. It's still got windows in the transom, and we like that. Everything looked pretty good. The bowsprit on this boat looks really nice. It has been modified. It's got a slightly different timber up on the bowsprit, but so here you can see the timber used to support the bowsprit is square, and usually they're round and kind of tapered as they get closer to the point to the front. But hey, all in all, it still looks great. They did a good job. Everything looks good on the hull, so we're happy with everything that we saw down there. The propeller looks good. The zincs look good. The rudder didn't have any play in it. The propeller shaft didn't have any play in it. Everything looked good. It wasn't pitted. So we climb that enormous ladder and we get up on deck and we're looking around, and first thing I noticed was this has aluminum mast on it, which is really nice. So one of the first things we noticed when we got up on the main deck there was that this boat had aluminum mast already with it. Wow, that's a huge plus for a Formosa to have aluminum mast, because usually you'll see these with wooden masts on them and they're
usually not in very good condition. This thing has what looks to be like brand new aluminum mast with it.
For Formosa to have aluminum mast, and it's got all the rigging and everything, and it looks like the rigging is like in really good shape. Yeah. So the mast, the rigging, that's a big plus. I mean, if you're gonna get a Formosa and it has the aluminum mast on it, that's a big plus. So we're pretty happy.
While we're taking a look at the mast, we also noticed that the rigging and the turnbuckles, everything on this boat as far as the rigging goes, and the turnbuckles and swedge fittings and all that stuff, they all looked like they're in really good shape. I mean, if they weren't new, they were in really good condition.
Pretty happy to see the aluminum mast and all the nice cable rigging. Looks like it's like in really new condition. So those are big savings in money right there. If that is to ring out true, that the rigging is in good shape and fairly new, then you know that's a big savings right there. So that we wouldn't have to spend on this, getting the new mast and the new rigging set up. So that was cool. It has the teak decks on there, but these teak decks, like many Formosas this age, have seen better days. And then there's a couple spots where these teak decks are lifting up. So
here's a couple pictures of the teak decks on this boat, and you can see behind my feet in some areas where the teak is actually lifting up, and some spots where it's actually kind of shifted a little bit and missing. And that's gonna be, there's gonna be signs down below where that's showing that it's leaking and water's penetrating the decks, or something even worse. Maybe there's gonna be some rot. But yeah, it's often the way it is on these Formosas. The teak decks just don't last that long.
I would assume that if we see that up on deck, that when we get down inside, it's probably going to have some water damage inside as well. And even has new mast bases as well. So for the mast step, for the mizzen mast.
So here's a shot of the mast base, or the mast step for the mizzen mast. It looks like it's brand new. So that's nice. That's, you know, that's going to last for a really long time.
So we go ahead and start heading towards the companionway doors and head on down inside.
Here's a couple pictures of the entrance to the companionway. You can see the doors here. They're a little weathered, but I think they would clean up really well and get some nice varnish on them. They'd look good as new. So that's just the way they look from sitting.
And this has this has the nice stairs to go down inside, so we kind of like that. It's not like you're climbing down a ladder. They're actually steps. And so that's one of the nice things that I like about the Formosas, and you like it as well, that we're actually going downstairs instead of a ladder. And inside each stair has storage behind it, which is really nice. So that's kind of a plus, because storage is always a premium on a boat. Right. So
here's a closer look at the companionway stairs on this Formosa. Although they appear to be a little bit weathered and aged, it does look like water's been running on these and dripping on them quite a bit. But they're not rotted. They don't look like they're rotted at all. These would sand and clean up really well and get some nice varnish on there, and they would be good as new and last a really long time. So, but they're just nice. They're comfortable to walk up and down. It's very safe.
First thing we notice inside is most of the teak looks pretty good. We do see a couple areas where there's actually some rot.
So here's a couple pictures of some of the rot we found throughout the boat. This is a rotted beam on the overhead. This one's going to take a little bit of work to replace, but not too difficult. But this next one here, this one's rotted on both ends, and this is another overhead support beam, and it's rotted on both ends, so this one's going to be a little bit more tricky. Likely there's more rot than what can be seen, so full replacement of that beam and maybe where it attaches. And then this is on an overhead ceiling panel, I believe, and this is also rotted and will require to be replaced.
But it is a Formosa and it has been leaking, so we figure that we're gonna it's a given. It goes with the territory on the Formosas. You're gonna lose some battles on some of that wood. So then we go ahead and continue looking around the main salon, and the main salon looks really nice. It has a nice large table area there for seating. The Formosas and the CTs and the Hudson Force 50s, they all have really nice seating areas in them. So, and teak galore. The Formosas are really beautiful inside for the teak wood, and same with the CTs and the Hudson Forces, and this boat did not disappoint. The interior was really nice, very spacious, very open.
As we entered the main salon area, we started looking around at all the teak inside and noticed how beautiful it is. Although it needs to be taken care of, it needs to be refinished, a lot of this would come back to looking really nice. But yeah, there's a lot of wood inside these Formosas, and that's one of the things we really like about them. Just all the beautiful woodwork. That stuff just does not slap together in 5 minutes. It takes a lot of craftsmanship and skill to put them together.
A couple of the main cabin windows had some look like early stages, which early stages of rot is actually not too bad. We could probably fix it, probably save it with some penetrating epoxy maybe, or splicing in and out some sections of good wood. On a lot of Formosas you're going to see stuff like that.
We did notice, looking around some of the window frames in the main salon area, that they had some signs of moisture and the paint was lifting and cracking, and those are probably some early signs of maybe some light rot around the frames. Could still be fixed, nothing major, but it's something that needs attention.
You could see on the dinette table where water had been dripping on it pretty steadily.
So here's a couple pictures of the dinette table in the main salon area, and you can see the water stains on there. That water's been dripping on there for a really long time, and then it drips on the table and then it flows onto the floor. You can see the floor is also stained, but most of this is superficial. It can be sanded and brought back with some good varnish and the stains will be gone.
And around the stairs also you can see some water on the back bulkhead, some staining, but not rot. So yeah, it's not bad. They had the floorboard up, so we went ahead and took a look at the engine while we were there. Glanced down underneath the floorboards, looked at the engine. Engine looks like it's in really good shape, really good condition. It's been well taken care of, or it's been changed out, one or the other. But the engine looks like it's in fairly good condition.
So we took a look at the engine since the floorboards were up, and we noticed the engine looked like it was in pretty good condition for the age of the boat and everything like that. It was clean. It didn't look like it had any major rust or corrosion on it. There were some areas where there was a little bit of rust here and there on some of the bolt mounting places, but nothing major. Transmission also looked pretty good for the age of the vessel and everything. It had a vibration dampener on the coupler, which was nice, and then it also had a shaft support going through a bulkhead, and everything looked really good. So the engine compartment on this Formosa was pretty surprisingly good condition.
I also noticed that they had installed a vacuum flush sanitation system for the toilet, which is cool. That's a big plus. I mean, that's like what we had on the Sea Ray. We really like that setup. So the vacuum flush is really a nice way to go for marine heads and sanitation. If you
Yeah, as we were looking around down at the engine, we also noticed that there's a vacuum flush system installed on this boat, and we saw the vacuum chamber first, and then we noticed the vacuum pumps. And yeah, so we were taking a look around, saw that. That was pretty nice, because if you haven't had experience with vacuum flush on a marine head system on the boat, they're really nice to have. And like I said, when they work well, they work really good. They're nice and convenient. No handle to pump, none of that stuff. But they have to have their maintenance, or they will go on the wrong side of that as well.
If you have any experience with that, you'll know that those are pretty nice to have when they work right. And I mean when they work right, because when they don't work right, they don't. So while we're looking around down under there, I also noticed that they had a fairly new water heater on there as well, a larger one, which was cool.
So yeah, we're taking a look under there, and we also noticed the hot water heater. That's a larger hot water heater, and I don't think that's vintage Formosa. That looks to be a new upgrade, which is probably really nice to have on a boat like this.
It looked like the holding tank for the marine sanitation, the sewage. Yeah, it looked like that had busted, and there was quite a large amount of fluid down there in the lower bilge back where the holding tank is. So
here's a couple looks at the holding tank, which is no longer holding, it's leaking. And this is the waste tank for the sewage system, and it's leaking throughout the lower bilge area there. And yeah, usually what happens is somebody will overfill the holding tank using the vacuum flush, and it becomes too pressurized and has to let go somehow. But don't ask me how I know that one.
Somebody gets to clean that up when they buy the boat. So there is always that to look forward to. So then we kind of just glance around. The bilge looks like it's in pretty good shape for the age of the boat. The paint in the bilge, the equipment down in the bilge, everything looks like it's in fairly good condition. The tanks, everything looks good except for where the holding tank is. That was the only thing that I could really see that had any kind of
concern.
Yeah, but otherwise, looked like the through-hole fittings, the valves, The pumps, everything looked like it's in pretty good shape. So we're pretty happy with what we saw down there.
So yeah, looking around the bilge area, I think most everything looked like it was in generally good condition. The hoses and through-hole fittings, things like that, I would probably take a little closer to look at before it was going to be splashed. But all in all, everything looked like it was in pretty decent shape. Fuel lines look like, they're all right. Everything looks okay. The fuel filter system probably is a little bit dated. I think I would upgrade that. But otherwise, everything looked like it was all right. I mean, just needs general cleaning and, a visual inspection to make sure everything looks good. And if everything visually looks good, then hopefully it operates good.
The backstory on this boat was the gentleman who owned it had passed away. And so the family was just trying to sell the boat.
Get rid of it.
Yeah, and they weren't really asking a lot of money. They're actually asking a pretty fair price for it.
Mm-hmm.
The boat was relatively clean. It was pretty much clutter-free inside. There was some spares for rigging and pulleys and things like that, some spare fenders.
Here's a couple of pieces of spare rigging pieces, a couple shackles, things like that. There was also several fenders and looks like life jackets stored away. And, those things come in handy, so less that you have to buy later on down the road. And then also a nice large shore power cable as well. So
the breaker control panel for electronics was very simple, very, very dated. We would definitely want to be upgrading that. It has really limited abilities to control many systems, and it's just really old. It does not have a lot of, it's not really complex, I'll just say that. So we would definitely want to be updating that.
So here's a couple pictures of the breaker control panel, and this is actually on the inside helm area, the helm station on the inside. And this boat is one of those boats you can drive it from inside or outside, which is kind of nice. You have a couple options for bad weather or good weather driving. Anyways, it has a drawer at the bottom as well, which is, good for a little bit of storage area there. But yeah, so here's a kind of not really good shot, but here's a shot of the helm station. You can see the shaft where the helm wheel is supposed to attach there.
This, you could also drive it from inside or outside. It had a helm inside and outside, so that was nice. It had some little nice touches inside where there was like these stained glass covers that were over some of the port lights around portholes in the boat.
In several areas throughout the boat, you'd see the port lights with these little covers hanging over the front of them to block the light out, and that was kind of cool. So a little neat touch.
Lots of areas for sleeping. The V-berth area had plenty of room for sleeping. There was bunk quarter berths on the way up to the forward V-berth area, which was really nice. We like that.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I want to have people stay over with us or something.
On our way forward to the V-berth area, we'd have to go down a series of 2 stairs, and then we enter into what's like a lower salon area, which has a couch and seating area on both sides. Lots of teak work on both sides and storage cabinets throughout. It's just a really beautiful area. It's like a whole nother main salon, except it's lower and just really neat place for hanging out. It'd be good for like watching movies or just overall relaxing. So as we continue moving forward towards the V-berth area, you'll see a hole in the floor, and that's actually the main mast step base. That's where the mast will sit in that and holds the main mast secure. And then there's also the main mast opening, which is going to be in the upper deck area, straight up above, and that's where the main mast will come out through the deck up onto the top deck area. So it's pretty neat, little detail information there. And then there's also the navigation and all the wiring coming through for the mast as well. So, and just to the right of the main mast base there, you'll see it looks like a little mini bunk bed, but it's like a quarter berth, and 2 adults, if they knew each other really well, they could sleep there together. And then finally we have the V-berth here, and the V-berth has lots of teak flooring in it, and on the sidewalls and everything, it's really beautiful. On the left-hand side there's storage shelves and teak slats with the white background. Looks very nice. And then on the right side, it has 2 bunk beds, and they're probably maybe some adults maybe could fit in there, but also it has lots of nice teak work there too. And then just forward of the V-berth area, there's a bulkhead with the door, and if you open that door, you'll see inside the main anchor chain locker, and you can see the chain and the rope there that's hooked to the chain. and the downspout where it comes through from the top deck. And that would be also how you could access the mounting point of the windlass that's up on the upper deck as well.
We open up cubbies, open up some doors for storage and stuff, and we noticed some areas of wood that had appeared to have gotten wet or started to rot a little bit. So not major concern in most areas, but there was some areas where there was more significant rot than others.
So here's a couple pictures of some of the examples of the areas. We'd open up cabinet doors or whatever, and you'd see some panels in there where there was some water staining, and then if you look closer you could see some actual rot on it, and some sidewalls areas too. But you know, nothing really bad, but some of it, you know, would definitely need some attention given to it, and possibly strengthened up with some penetrating epoxy or whatever. But you know, it's not the end of the world, but these are areas that you would want to definitely take care of sooner than later.
So just stuff that, you know, we go through these boats and we take a mental notes of what we see that's good and what's bad and what's ugly. And there's a little bit of everything on these Formosas. You're going to find that. I don't think there's going to be a perfect one out there. And if it is, it won't be in our price range.
That'll be very expensive.
Yeah. So the galley on this also is pretty simple. The stove needs to be updated. The refrigeration and freezer needs to be updated. And when I say updated, I mean removed and replaced with new, something modern. But no.
So here's a couple pictures of the galley on this boat. The galley is really nicely laid out. It's very simple. There's the oven and the refrigerator and the freezer would all need to be replaced with something more modern, more efficient. So here you can see inside the refrigerator. It's old, it's antiquated. There's newer, better, more efficient ones out on the market now, and something a little more attractive than that could easily fill that space. So, and then also you can see inside the freezer, this is one of those reaching down into it, down from the top of the countertop. And let's see, there's a little bit of storage here for some extra shackles, things like that. The thing about this galley is it's right as you come down the stairs. So if somebody's working in the galley and somebody needs to come into the boat to do something really quick, they're going to be bumping into each other.
But nothing major. I mean, that's not a huge expense. It's not a large project, so it's definitely something that's doable, and it wouldn't prevent us from moving forward on this. And in fact, we'd like actually to put our own stuff in there anyway. So this boat is set up with two heads, a forward head and an aft head in the master cabin area. And the forward head is got a little tub shower thing installed there. So
here's a couple pictures of the main forward head, and this is actually the main head on the boat. This is the one that has a stall shower, has a nice vacuum flush toilet system on there, and it's just a bigger bathroom altogether. So we would consider this the main head. This would be the one we'd use for showering, due to the fact that it's got the larger stall shower on it. It's just more roomy, has more cabinet space in it. The one in the aft cabin is really just kind of like a, you know, it's not something you're going to want to use for showering because it's a wet head. They're very inconvenient. In a wet head, everything gets wet. In this forward head here, everything's going to stay dry because you're going to have a separate stall shower, bathing area, and then you can step out onto the teak grating and dry yourself off. And it has a little bit more cabinet space in here throughout, and actually a port light as well. So the forward head on this boat would be considered the main head, in our opinion.
The master head is what we call a wet head, and that's where the shower is on a handle.
Yeah.
And you get wet, everything gets wet, the toilet gets wet. It's not our favorite, but you know, on a boat like this, we'd just use the forward head shower for showering. This has the nice teak doors on it, which we like that. It's just, I think the Formosas are really beautiful boats inside. They're not
Here's a couple pictures of some of the teak doors we were talking about. And some of the doors in this boat had actual hand carving on the teak of tigers and looked like a tropical background, things like that. And then some of the others were just plain teak on the sides there. But either way, these are beautiful doors and very solid.
They're not a CT54 type of beautiful, but they sure come in a really close second place. When they're done right, they're done right. They're really nice. It has the original data plate on the bulkhead that tells you where it was made, made in Taiwan shipyards. Has the hull numbers on there, has what year it was made, the length, all that stuff. So it's really nice because you won't.
So here we're looking at a picture of the data plate, and this shows what shipyard it was made in, what year it is, hull length, all that stuff, HIN numbers. It's good to have that on board
because you won't see that on all of them. Sometimes those are missing or broke free. The aft cabin has somewhat of a normal bed in the back. It's not what you would call, we wouldn't call it a steamroll bed, but it's not a partial walk around either. But on the Formosas, you can actually modify those to where you can do like a partial walk around on both sides. And which that makes it a lot easier to get in and out of the bed rather than just kind of having to scoot to the very edge. So here we're going to look at the entrance of the aft cabin. And passing through the aft cabin entrance, you start to see the main bed there. And the bed on this aft cabin is not a walk-around bed, but we have seen on other Formosas where these beds have been modified to where you can do a partial walk-around on both sides of it, and it's doable, so it does turn out pretty nice. So if we were going to have a boat like this, that's what we would do. We'd modify that bed. And then you also can see here that it only has the 2 windows in the aft transom, not the 3 windows like we've seen on other Formosas. And then here you can see some of the other teak work and cabinetry work inside the aft master cabin. And it has a lot of storage, a lot of little doors open here and there to store things away, your clothes, your personal items, whatever you have back there. Lots of storage for that in the master cabin, which is nice. And again, it's got all the beautiful teak work in here, so it's definitely a room we could fall in love with. We could adjust and modify the bed to fit our needs. We like it. But the aft cabin is nice. It's very spacious. It's got lots of storage cabinets throughout, so we're happy with what we saw back there. The only thing that kind of struck me as odd was the 2 windows in the back instead of the 3. Throughout the interior of the boat, we could definitely see where there was some dried up water stains all throughout. So I could imagine when this boat is out in the weather, it's leaking. It's a leaky tiki. And we figured that when we were up on deck, because we saw the teak was, in a lot of spots, it was either really worn thin or it was lifting up. And they did not fasten these teak decks to the hull with any type of sealant or anything like that. So eventually water would get under those teak strips, and then it would go to the screws, and it would get down into the actual decking of the boat, and that's where it would start to rot the core of the deck and eventually work its way to the inside. So yeah, so it's kind of, we figured we were going to see some of that anyways. All in all, I would say the interior of the boat was fair to average. It has a lot of nice woodwork inside, so it's a worthy project. It's worth saving. It's not something where I felt like we would be years and years and years trying to get it back into good shape. But there was some overhead main structural beams for the cabin top on the inside where they had some rot on them. So that would be, those are big jobs to replace, but it's doable. It's not the end of the world. So it's in our skill set wheelhouse. We could definitely do it. So yeah, we kind of wrapped up this review of that on the inside pretty quick. Everything was really exposed and readily accessible, which we like that.
Yeah, we like what we see.
Yeah, we liked everything we saw. It wasn't cluttered or anything like that. So that was cool. Also, I noticed that the transmission on this boat looked really nice. All the running gear underneath, the prop shaft, the coupler to the transmission, the oil cooler, the heat exchanger, all of the drivetrain all looked really well. So that was a big plus. I mean, whoever had this boat looked like they took pretty good care of it back in the day. And they did a lot of modifications up on deck. They, like I said, they had the aluminum mast on there. They completely rebuilt the bowsprit, or the dolphin viewing platform that we call it. Here's a couple looks at the forward bowsprit that's been modified by the previous owner. They did a really good job on it. It's a little different looking, more used to looking at the rounded support pillar, but this one still looks really nice. They modified it. It's a little different than what was original, but it's totally, something we could live with. It's not bad. They did a nice job of it. It had a nice strong windlass up front for the anchors.
Here's a look at the anchor windlass up front up on the bow. Now this one's a manual one, but these ones are really powerful.
So this has the butterfly hatches up on the deck, which is really cool.
Here's a look at one of those on deck butterfly hatches we were talking about. Now this one's a little hard to see because of all the clutter around it, but those things are really beautiful when they're varnished up and in really good looking condition. They let a lot of light in down below as well.
Yeah, pretty nice up on the front portion of the deck. Did notice some cracking around the cabin top area, you know, where we would have to address that.
Here's a look at that large vertical crack on the forward cabin top structure, and we're not sure if that's caused by moisture or if it's just paint cracking. It'd be worth looking into.
We did not see any sails for this boat, so I imagine that they had those in storage somewhere, because I didn't see them on the boat anywhere. But with the rigging as new as it was and the mast and everything, this boat has to have sails for it. So had a generator up on deck, so that tells you right there there's no onboard diesel generator with this boat.
Here's a look at the generator up on deck. It's sitting on top of one of the butterfly hatches, but yeah, no diesel generator on board.
But that's pretty common on these Formosas. A lot of them did not have one. Some people would add them afterwards, stuff like that, but it's not the end of the world. I did notice a lot of the teak railing on the aft deck area. It looks like it's in pretty good shape still, but it did look like it was separating away from the actual deck. Like, I don't know if the leg bolts and stuff pulled through or if they had taken them off for transportation, but I could see where there were some gaps under them in some places. So here's a couple pictures of the teak railing that we were talking about, and you can see where it's gapped and it's actually separated from some of the other teak trim, the railing and things like that. So we don't know if these were dislodged from bolts breaking or pulling through the wood, or if they actually removed these for transportation at some other time. Something that would be definitely worth taking a really close look at if we were going to get serious about this boat. The ship's wheel was also missing, but he said it was available. The gauges and electronics up on deck were very antiquated, limited. There was no navigation on this boat at all. None. Here's a couple of views of the aft cockpit main helm station, and as you can see, this is very old. It's needing some serious update. The gauges in this are really old and antiquated. Not even sure if any of those are even still working at this point, and even if they were, they'd be really hard to read with any kind of sunlight or nighttime even. They would just be too hard to read. And then here's the access cover to the back removed, and you can see the plumbing for the hydraulic, for the steering, and all the cables and stuff for the electrical. It all needs a little bit of looking at and some updating for sure. Here's a couple of views of the aft cockpit area on this boat. It needed some work for sure. The aft bench is missing. I don't know if it's gone or it's in storage somewhere, but it's totally removed. And so I don't know what they were doing, if they were trying to troubleshoot some leaks or if they were going to redo the teak decks or something, but it's missing. On the Formosa 51s, the aft cockpit is actually pretty roomy, especially with that aft bench being in place. It's a really nice area for seating while under sail or anything like that. So the Formosas have a really nice aft cockpit. On this boat, it was a little hard to show many pictures of the main deck area and to show how big or spacious it is because of the mast. We're taking up a lot of the space, and it just makes it hard to give that visual image of how big the deck space is on these boats. So we did the best we could, but with the mast being in the way, it was hard to show it. All in all, we were pretty happy with what we saw on the boat. You know, it was in pretty fair condition. It was priced fair. Yeah, so it was nice. It was a nice looking boat. I was definitely glad we saw it. So we decided that we would keep this boat on our list of boats to consider, and we would go back home once we left. We'd go back home and take a look at the pictures and decide if we were going to make an offer on it or not. But we were pretty happy. The gentleman that was there, he was really nice.
He's very helpful.
He's very helpful, very nice. He seemed like he knew quite a bit of history on the boat, which was good. This was a very simple setup boat. There wasn't a lot of complex systems on it. So you're pretty free to do whatever you want as far as during a refit. You don't have to worry about cutting and gutting a bunch of systems out of there. It's already pretty much bare bones, with the exception of the vacuum flush system and the new hot water heater. The rest of it, I would say the fuel tanks, I'd want to look at those. The water tanks, I'd look at those. All the lines and hoses and clamps, definitely be taking a look at that. The interior cushions would be redone. We definitely have to, the biggest expense that I could see on this boat and the biggest project is the decks.
Yeah, because the wood's very expensive.
Yeah, so you have to fix the decks before you can even stop the rest of the damage happening internally inside the boat, because the decks are what's causing the damage. So you have to rip them up, replace them. You either put non-skid on them, or you're going to rebed new teak strips on the deck and re-teak it. And of course, we'd want to re-teak it, you know, right? The doors had the nice hand carving on there. That's the Taiwan boats are really famous for having those beautiful hand carved doors on there. So we like that. It's a solid project. We had no real bad feelings about this boat. And we were happy that we took a look at it. It was well worth our time to go see this boat. And we decided that we would stay in touch with the broker.
Right. And
we would let him know once we got back home what our opinions were and what our thoughts were, and maybe we'd come up with an offer or something. So it was a good boat, and we still had to fly from here to San Diego, California, and we have another Formosa that we're going to be viewing there. It's a nice one too. So from what we could tell from the pictures, it looks like it was in pretty good shape, and it also only has the 2 windows in the aft transom as well. So if anybody out there knows why some have 2 windows and some have the 3 windows, and some of them have no windows in the transom. So I don't know if that's a model year or if it's a customer at purchase preference, but I don't know why, if you're going to put windows in the transom, why wouldn't you just do the 3? But so if we would buy one of these boats, we'd definitely be putting the 3 windows. We'd have to modify it, you know. What did you think? Were you know?
Well, I like the boat.
Yeah.
It's nice. It's clean. It's just it's a matter of bringing it home.
Oh yeah, good point. Yeah, so that's the big, I guess, the most expensive part about this boat is the matter of bringing it home. And at this time we were viewing it, we didn't really have any idea on how much that expense would be. So this boat is located in Cleveland, Ohio. We're in Seattle, Washington. So yeah, we'd have to figure out how much it would cost to bring it home.
Yeah.
You know. And then if you're going to ship a boat this size, all that railing, anything that sticks up above the deck's got to come off. So, but it looks like this was pretty well broken down already. I don't think there would be a lot more that would have to come off, but except the teak railing would have to come off. So, thoughts?
No.
No final tufts?
No, because at this point I was already kind of attached to Pearson.
Oh yeah.
Remember?
Yeah.
We already have the numbering, which one we like, which one is number 1, which one is number 2.
Yeah.
But I still have the Pearson.
Yeah, and at this stage I was still a fan of the Pearson as well. And like we said, we thought this was a nice boat. It wasn't like they were trying to hide anything or anything like that. It was very open and accessible, and the areas that had damage was pretty clear what areas had damage. Right? Yeah. What else?
I think that's it.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and wrap this up then. And like always, we just like to say thank you to the people who have subscribed. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please take the time to like and subscribe. And feel free to comment down below. What did you think? Did you think this was a worthy project, or is this something that you'd run away from?
It's not a lot of project. I mean, you can do it.
Oh yeah, we can do it. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. See ya. See you next time. We'll be in San Diego. Coming up next, we traveled from Cleveland, Ohio to San Diego, California to look at a 1974 Formosa 51.
Now there's a nice looking shell. I'd keep that one.
And what's that?
My idea. Oh, we got a boat coming. It's this guy. Nice. Dang. 5 engines on the back. That was sweet.
Welcome back.
What? Remember.
Yeah.
Welcome back. Okay, you ready? I got it. You got it? Go for it. Let's hear what you got.
Together,
We make DIY nautical dream. Okay.
No, I was just
Oh,
starting
that's it? Okay. All right. I guess I'll guess one more. Go